Hey, how you doing, everybody? Welcome back to another live Q&A with David Hubert and myself. I feel like I had something kind of interesting to say, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, yeah, I remember what I was going to say. For those who noticed that I have a habit of not shutting down streams at the end of my streams, it was so funny story. The last time, this on Sunday, we do the live reviews that we do. Like there's the three kind of lottery kind of people are signing up from the Agora.Community, and 3 of people get chosen out of the people who submit their work to be reviewed. I do this every Sunday evening, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Anyways, and this is not the first time this has happened, but this one was special for us. Very, very interesting reason. I sometimes turn off. I kind of shut down my camera, but I forget to end the stream. So that happened again. And Crab Nuts is usually the one that calls in the alarm and lets us know that I forgot. But this time I did notice, but it was about 2 hours afterwards. But lo and behold, I show up and there was about 12 of you still in there chatting and apparently grinding loyalty points for my Twitch channel, which I just about died when I found out. That was really funny. So good one. You got me. Good stuff. They'll teach me, I guess, to not shut my streams down. So let's bring in David so he can laugh at me too. Here we go. Hello, David.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah. I was like, what are you guys still doing in here? They're like, obviously, we're just grinding your loyalty points. Man, we've got 2 hours worth of just watching your channel with nothing but just like a text on the screen. That's so funny. Crab Nuts was there. I think both Tabitha and Veronica were both there. And I scrolled up. They were just shooting the shit the entire time. It was funny. Oh, man. Funny.
Awesome.
The things that happen when you, when you're out, it's like, I felt like it was like, it's like when you leave the kids in the car and you're like, don't touch anything. And you come back and the radio's full blast. The windows are all down. Yeah. There's a dead cat in the front seat. We don't know how that got there, but crazy things. So go ahead.
You should do an experiment. You should just randomly let it run again. And let's see who's the survivor of this.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea.
18 hours, still going.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Right. Oh, what? Sorry. So some of you had to go to sleep. You big babies don't have what it takes. Oh, look at Zentite is like on it with a question. Like she like
right up the gates.
She's not wasting any time. Okay, so what do you want to do? We should start with that, I guess, because I mean, eager beaver,
Let's
right?
start with that. I
Early
mean,
bird
you
gets the
have to
worm.
give credits where credits is due. So
You have
let's
to.
do it.
There is my second one will definitely be from the archive because I promised Scott because he has a habit of dropping to get the hype up. He uses one of the first questions in the backlog to advertise the Q&A. So we'll do that one next. Okay, so what are the studios with the best working conditions you know of? For example, flexible hours, accept remote work, paid overtime, social advantages, stable job, good pay, ... Making us pick favorites.
Yeah, that's a tough question. And I mean, we can only answer this question with the knowledge that we have, which means that we do not know the conditions of every studio on the planet. And when we're talking about accepting remote and all that, I mean, this obviously is going to change a lot. In the because I'm going to provide a example of a studio brand that we worked at in the past, ADOS Montreal, that they had a policy of accepting remote work.
And this is before the pandemic.
Yeah, that was before the pandemic. That was actually like
way before
5, 6, 7 years ago. So
way ahead of their time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But my point is that it's not because it was a initiative that was pushed and encouraged by the studio. And by the way, when we said when we're talking about remote work here, it's not like full time you can work from home. It's more like, well, you have a medical appointment, it's fine. You're sick,
exactly.
Your kid is sick, you're at home, and you don't have much to do anyway. It's fine. You can
totally. It's like an exceptional thing, not for long term.
Maybe it went up to, let's say, 2 days a week because I do 3 hours of commuting and it makes no sense. So it was not full on remote. It's just yes, we are flexible. But even and ADOS or Montreal was a studio of maybe, I don't know, 450, 500 employees.
Like that. Medium-sized studio.
Medium-sized studio. But even within the studio, it kind of depend a little bit of the team that you are on. So it's not because the studio is saying we are open for that and we're going to incentivize the different production. If you happen to be working for a producer or project manager, and this is not just ADOS, this is in all studio, even within those big or medium studio, it really depends what project you're on, what team you're on. So, and again, I'm just putting this as an introduction to say, even if there's some studio that we mentioned that we had great experience at, it's totally possible that someone else on another team a few years before or after had a completely different experience. So we cannot generalize this.
I agree with that. I mean, and I'll be open to say it. I don't like talking specific about specific studios, but like big studios, okay, I've worked at a couple, and they are it is like its own ecosystem, like with its own little mini ecosystems, like those projects. So I know people that work at some of these big studios that completely love their experience, and then I know people at the same studio on a different project that literally think that studio is completely broken. So it really, like, your mileage will always vary at the bigger studios for sure. If you want a more consistent experience, for sure, the smaller studios, the independent studios especially, because everyone knows each other on those studios, so it would be very weird for you to have a completely different. I mean, everyone has different expectations as well, right? It's a hard one to nail down. I know we're kind of being dodgy on the topic here, but it really is difficult. Like it's a great deal matter of opinion. I would recommend, like, there's a pretty good website out there called Glassdoor? There's a really good website that I think it's called Glassdoor. I have to do, and someone in chat might be able to back me up on this. And it is literally an online sort of library of places that you could work, like in some of them, like, and this is everywhere. It's not just game studios and animation studios. It's the whole gamut of different companies, and it's people rating their places of work on these exact things. So there are some websites that are popping up that are kind of trying to do their best to have like anonymous reporting of the conditions. But again, you're going to see wildly different opinions. Glassdoor. Okay, good. Super useful. I think it's a good place to start, at least. Because if you're looking at a company and you do a little homework and it's like nothing but red flags, probably one to avoid. But don't be surprised. You're going to see some that are going to have glowing reviews and then like on the other end of the spectrum, people are going to just want to burn the studio down. It's just the way it is, unfortunately, because different experiences, different personalities, bad chemistry, good chemistry, you name it.
Yeah. I'm going to dive in and say that probably my best working experience, and for one of the studio that had one of the best reputation of how good they were with their employee, was working at DreamWorks. Honestly, if we're talking about the social advantage that they're providing, the salaries that they were providing, I mean, stable job for, I think most animators, it was a 3-year contract from the get-go. And just everything that they were providing. I mean, the free food all day long and all that. I know that it obviously the studio has been under different management and it changed. I'm pretty sure that most of the good stuff that was back in the days is still there. But yeah, I would definitely put DreamWorks, and this is also the reputation that it had at the time. I would put it up there with a few others. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're not the only one I've heard that. Heard say that. I think I hear a lot of really great things about Pixar as well. I mean, they seem to treat, like, when you're at that echelon or that upper echelon of studio, like in your destination studios, it's not always true. It's not always true, but often they know that if you're good enough to work for them, that you are marketable. Like, you don't have to work for them. And so that what happens is they start, developing the attitude of they have no choice. If they want to stay competitive, they have to be super competitive with the conditions and the policies that they actually present. Because otherwise you're just going to walk. You're going to be like, okay, well, no, I'm going to go over here because it's way better. Yeah. So you'll find that usually the studios in the same kind of tier are going to be, especially down in an area where there's a lot of competition. So that's another thing to consider. If you go to a city, or at least they're looking at a city that have a lot of studios, that's where you're usually going to find the best conditions, because they have no choice, because otherwise they will lose all of their employees to the one studio that's in town that says, you know what, we're going to just have very progressive policies here, and we're going to pay people really well. And, but unfortunately it doesn't always come as a full package. Sometimes you'll see a new studio roll in a town and then they just offer a lot of money. And what you'll see happen is it'll be a vacuum. It'll pull people from all these different studios, and then it implodes because all they had was money to offer. They didn't have very good policies. They didn't have a very good structure. And so money only lasts so long before people are like, they kind of lose their appetite, and then they look for better conditions. So that's something to look out for too.
Yeah, I would agree. And when we're talking, let's in the Los Angeles area that you had, I mean, close by, you had DreamWorks, you had Disney, Sony was not very far in Culver City. They're all great studio to work on, but there's some difference here there. Sony, for instance, most of my friends that were working there, great conditions, but compared to DreamWorks, who were offering like a 3-year deal, they were often going one movie at a time. So your contract is going to end at the end of some people like that. Yeah, exactly. So it's not that it's a better or worse. It's just a different way. So you kind of choose, based on those different
and to be clear, some people stay there for years. It's just that they just renew every year. Like it's not, it gives you the option. And it's sometimes nice. And because again, when you're at that level of an animator, and you sometimes want to be, it's not the studio you want to work for, it's more the project. And so by working on a project that you really like, it's kind of nice to be able to have no strings attached at the end. And you like, wow, you got another project, and I got the director who wants me to work on the project. It looks really exciting. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll stay. Or they're like, well, like DreamWorks looks like that. I'd really like to work on the next, Madagascar, and then they go. And so it's kind of nice when you can be in an area where you have choice. And that's, I think, the best advice that I can give you on the topic, because even the situation can change. I mean, what was interesting, this whole pandemic is very interesting, and it will continue to be interesting as we watch studios start to open back up, is just watching how that changes the dynamic, because all it takes is a studio that might have been at the top rankings of good conditions might just suddenly fall down to the bottom because they're unwilling to change and have more flexible working conditions for the post-pandemic world we live in. Who knows? So pay attention. Just don't be afraid to ask all the right questions at the interview.
Yeah. As As for paid overtime, that's an interesting question. I'm really under the impression that, I mean, I don't want to date ourselves, but when Brent and I started, paid overtime was a luxury that not that many studios were offering. I feel that now in North America, I'm under the pressure that it isn't really the case anymore. There's different way to approach it. There's some studios that are going to pay like
time in lieu.
No, yeah,
meaning,
but
like you get time off instead of pay, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to repay with vacation. There's some studios that are going to give you the same salary. Others, it will be 50% more than your salary. And you know, and there may be some studios that say, you know what, we cannot pay for more than 40 hours. So please, after 40 hours, leave and go home. And I can assume that there's some people that are willingly providing their overtime without letting the management know, and they don't log their hours. For me, this doesn't really qualify as unpaid overtime. Unpaid overtime is basically you're politely requested, can you please stay and continue, but we won't be able to pay those extra hours. This is what unpaid overtime is for. So I'm under the impression that the vast majority of studio now
I would agree.
North America and most probably Europe as well, I would be assuming the vast majority are paying overtime. But I'd be very interested to see what is the percentage per country. I'll be very interested to have this data. Because as something that used to be more accepted when there was, not a lot of studio and a lot of people that were trying to have work, the dynamic completely changed today. And I feel that unpaid overtime is very frowned upon.
It is. Yeah, it's definitely a dying breed, thankfully. But I agree with David. But when we started, it was like the Wild West. Sergey, I saw your comment there. I think the point I was making is that when if you're an animator down in the Bay Area, there are a lot of the ones I know, they do bounce around from studio to studio quite a bit. It's not everybody. Some people prefer to work with a consistent crowd, people that they respect and like, but a lot of them, the crowd isn't not contained to one singular company, in my opinion. I think it's like they get used to just, they move to another company on a different project, and there's a bunch of friends that they worked with before on another project. And so it really depends. It completely depends on you. Some people, I think that the older you get, the more likely you are to think what Sergey just put down there, and you stop caring a little bit about the projects, because you're like, okay, you know what, I'm not a young kid anymore. I think what I need is to be working around a bunch of adults, and I'm kind of tired of working around a bunch of people that are just like hot shot egomaniacs. I'm just done with that. I'd rather just work with a bunch of people that I have fun with, that I can collaborate with, and I'll enjoy my day going to the studio. That becomes a much, much more important thing over the years, I find. But young animators are a little less focused on that, because they don't have necessarily the life experience or the career experience to feel like that yet. They're just chasing after the exciting projects. At least I find that on average, that's usually the way it works. I sound like a jaded old man saying this, but I mean, I don't know. And everyone's different. I mean, there's some young people that come out of the schools that are already kind of a bit more conscientious about the conditions and the type of people that we working with, like Xanatite here. I mean, if she's asking questions like this, is obviously because she's looking before she jumps, right?
Yeah. I would say you probably out of school, you take any good opportunity that is coming your way, and I agree that later on it's more like the conditions and who am I going to work with. And I think there's this part maybe when you're a junior mid-level that it's a combination of many things. What is the position that they're looking for? What are the conditions that are coming with it, like the salary, the advantage, all of that? Who am I going to work with? What is the studio? Is it a big renowned studio where I can use as a as a stepping stone in my career? What project is it? So I think there must be like 10 different parameters, and everyone is a bit more sensible to one or the other. But I do agree. When I feel that when you reach 15-20 years experience, it's not that you've done all the kind, and maybe there's something on your list that you really want to do that you haven't done, and you're going to go for that project, but you become a bit less how can I say, excited
Yeah.
by projects specifically, because you feel that you've
Yeah.
experienced a little bit
That's
of
it.
everything,
That's it.
and you do realize that the people around you have a big part of. So
Yeah.
the studio culture and your team might be favored later on.
Yeah. Like I always say, not my first rodeo. Like if after a while you've kind of like you've seen it all, and it's like it just becomes like, can I just work on a project which is not have stupid overtime and has a bunch of people that are not just driven only by their ego? Like these become so much more important to you because the other stuff gets really old, so old.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry we didn't really directly answer your questions on like giving you a list. I don't want to pick favorites, and besides, I could give you advice on a studio that I myself really liked, or I know a lot of other people liked, but may not be the same for you. You never really know. If you are specifically curious about some specific studios I've heard a lot of good things about, then you can send me a message privately and we can talk.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got another question up here. The first one that Scott wanted us to ask, which is, I got to give you points for this name. Yeah. Asked, how can my body mechanics improve? Well, let me give you the first tip is it's left, then right, then left, then right, then left. And you guessed it right after that. That's a big question, my friend. How can I think this is obviously a very, very, very relative term because I don't know what your body mechanics currently look like.
Yeah. So should we assuming it's an animator that wants to know how to improve his body mechanics animation?
Or like maybe somebody who had some sort of like suffered a head injury and forgot how to walk. It could be either one. Maybe why not both? Why can't it be both?
Go ahead. All right, let's try with this one. I mean, on my side, full disclaimer, I've really enjoyed my career as an animator, but I've not been animating myself for 10 years now.
Forgot.
I've not been teaching for 5 years, and I've not been supervising for 3 years. So all of what I'm going to is past memories of David, the animator, the teacher, and the supervisor. I would say for me, there's a lot of things that I just did kind of, I don't want to say randomly, but intuitively. And it's really when I started to teach, or rather my preparation of teaching, I was like, all right, I need to tell those kids how to make it work and why that's a good way. So I basically had to inverse engineer a lot of the things that I was doing just to say how. I cannot just say just do that and it's going to work, because obviously, look, it's working. And this is when I discovered something, which is basically the Newton's second law of motion, or just inertia in general.
Yeah,
something that doesn't move wants to stay still, and something that is in motion wants to continue to move.
Yes, it does.
I
like to call it the grumpy factor of a mass. The grumpiness. Doesn't stubborn little mass doesn't like to change its mind.
Yeah, and so once you start to pay attention to this thing, you realize that motion is every motion is impacted by it. What is a walk? A walk is basically being slightly off balance forward, and your step or keeping you in this unbalanced forward. How do you start to walk? Well, you need to lean forward. You need to have a little bit of your weight that's going to be unbalanced, and then you start to work.
That's right.
You run even more intense. If you want to brake, you have to pull your weight back to be unbalanced backward for the amount of time that your center of gravity is going to come back in the middle point. And you start to just look at reference and keep this in mind. Okay, it's not moving. What is going to make it work? Oh, it's actually this leg and this arm, and this is going to create the first motion, and then it's off balance, and now you maintain it. And so this is something that you cannot, once you paid attention to it, you cannot not see it anymore. Right. And what happens if you have a character that you like, I don't know, he starts to run, but it's like there's an invisible rope that is pulling. What is that? Well, you just didn't lean forward enough to allow inertia to continue. And the same thing, I don't know, it seems that my character is hitting an invisible wall. Well, it's the same reason. When it's stopping, it's because you didn't lean in the other direction. You need to apply force in the opposite direction to make sure that it's going to come back to a static point. So keep this in mind and look at reference and just train your eyes to understand that if it doesn't move, it doesn't want to move. An external force will have to push it, and the opposite is true as well.
Yeah, it's funny because it all comes down to perspective. And what David's talking about is the experience he's had is similar to mine, which is it didn't start like that. For me, it was through mimicking things and just sort of trying to imitate things instead of taking a minute to friggin' understand things. Mm-hmm. The understanding part is the most important part. And it's a big theme in my intro class that I teach at iAnimate is I really make people stop and think about what they're doing. If you think about it, the basic physics, like you could like literally just read up on basic like mechanical physics and you would be super benefiting yourself when it comes to like animation, because it's going to make you aware of terms. Like I bring up terms like inertia and momentum all the time, and some people don't even know what those things are, and they're at a disadvantage because those things are principles that are existing around us all of the time, and it is absolutely essential to understand those for you to be able to recreate the illusion of movement of a living, breathing thing, and even unbreathing things like just a car. Like you want a car that's going to screech into a halt, and then it's like the idea that it's a chassis resting on some spring shocks that it surges forward and does this after it stops. Well, that's just all that is. That overlapping action of that upper chassis is the mass that is the actual frame of the car wants to continue to move, but it has no way of stopping immediately. It's attached to the tires through a flexible joint, which are the shocks. And so naturally it surges forward and then kind of comes back and rests after jiggling around a couple times, depending on how loose the shocks are. Basically, it's like you could see that and maybe put that into your work, or you could know that that's what's happening, and it makes it easier for you to pick these things out and make sure you're putting them in. So I would recommend reading up on basic physics. You don't have to know the math. You don't need to like learn calculus. You don't need to do any of that. It's just about understanding the basic principles. And there's a lot of good books out there on this. Another good thing to look at would be basic mechanisms, like levers, and because we're just a complex set of levers, if you really think about it, right? Like it's funny. One of the things we do in my class, we talk about a jump. Like how does someone jump? Why do we squat down first before we jump? Well, it's simple. We have to provide ourselves a runway. I always talk about it like as a runway gives me space for my legs to straighten, so that I have enough time to get to enough speed, so that I have enough momentum of my mass. And once that momentum is there, because of inertia, it would like to continue moving up, even though there's no longer any thrust after I straighten my legs. And so if I can get enough momentum upwards to defeat the 9.8 newtons of pressure downwards from gravity, I will jump. And that's basically what a jump is, And so there are two levers in our leg. There is the main lever in our knee, which is like our quadriceps and our like down through our shin through our knee. But then there's another one, which is our calf muscle that flexes our toes straight to point down towards the ground. So you actually have two big muscles that are actually working there to jump, and to just to know that and understand that will help you a lot. Yeah. But yeah, it's a big question. You'll be learning how to get better body mechanics all of your life. There's no doubt in my mind. Everyone's always learning this.
Yeah. And, learning anatomy, obviously, it's going to, because it's one thing to know the law of physics, but the anatomy is how the human body is basically the vehicle to use those laws of physics to move around.
Totally.
And it can be, you can go all in and understand what muscle is flexing. There might be it might be a bit overkill, but it's like anything that you dive deep into. Eventually, it just becomes part of your unconscious, and you just happen to make the right decision. You don't know why exactly, but it's because you study so much. But there's also like little not tricks, but little thing, like, when you're raising your arm, I mean, I'm too much close up here, but basically the first 45 degree of raising, it's all of the forearm.
Yes.
And from 45 to 90 degree, now it's when the shoulder is coming in.
That's
so
right.
you know that if you do this motion, it's barely going to move. But if you go and raise it a little bit more, now it's the shoulder that has to take on from this point.
Right.
It's just one of many examples, but once you know it, and you see like a character that is putting his arm in the air, but it's actually leaded by the shoulder, and then it goes up. You're like, no. It start with the arm, and roughly at this angle, this is when the shoulder is taking up.
It engages,
and it's almost always and those tricks are working like 90% of the time, unless you have a very big weight, and then you're actually using your upper body and shoulder first to get it up afterwards. But just learn how this vehicle is moving, so you understand the physics of it, and then you understand, and that's the same thing with quadruped. How are these scapula working? What is the gaits? And it's all super interesting. Same thing for flying. How is the wing doing the least amount of friction on the way up and the maximum amount of friction with the air on the way down? I think it's one of the cool thing with animation is just to learn about all of those new character and creature, and observation is when we're the weight is something as well that is super important, and that there's one of the thing that when you're shooting reference, for instance, if you need to shoot a reference with a heavy sword and you have only a small plastic sword or a 8-pound weight that you can move around, take the 8-pound weight. Take whatever is you can grip and has the weight of because it's going to affect all the rest of the body.
That is
so much.
Such good advice. I dish this advice out all around a regular basis. Your job when you're shooting reference is to try to make it as real as possible. But when people are running around with their like fake plastic swords and thinking that it's going to look good in the end, it's like, no. It's because there's nothing there to actually examine at that point. You need to have something that resembles kind of hopefully the overall sort of shape, I guess, but also in some cases.
Well, I mean, ideally the volume, but the weight is so much more important than the volume of whatever props you're using.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's obviously there's a big question. I mean, there's a lot to talk about here, like I said, but I think you just start somewhere. And I think you could start with just by being observant and not taking what you're seeing for granted. Be a little bit more hungry to look deeper beyond the surface. Like I was doing, a lot of us start like that. It's like you're just doing it off of reflex and instinct, but you're not doing it like there's no basis under the decisions you're making. You're going to probably realize this right away when you really ask yourself, like, why am I animating it like this? And if you don't know the answers, because you're freaking winging it at that point. Then there's a reason why a lot of awkward poses happen, because if you don't understand how anatomy works, then you're gonna the clavicle thing is one of my biggest pet peeves. Underutilized or unutilized clavicles. It's just so it's like, really, like this is the kind of thing you don't want to get caught on, because your stuff just looks like so amateur when you do that.
And that's the thing. Our eyes are trained to recognize, I mean, facial expression, yes, and all that, but body mechanic that doesn't really respect the law of physics, anyone, even non-animators, are like, they will say there's something weird because they don't have the knowledge and the vocabulary to know exactly what's going on, but everyone is going to notice.
That's
and this apply as much for realistic animation as stylized animation as well. You can probably go to the extreme of stylized, that it's just pure pose to pose, that it starts to be a little bit more forgiving if you don't apply them. But usually stylized animation, if anything, is just exaggerating those law of motion in action.
The good stuff is, I think some animations that go too far and it's not really grounded at all with those basic rules, and they're no longer extrapolations of like of actual rules of physics, I kind of lose interest. But I'm on the really nice stuff usually is. It's usually
Yeah.
about like, it's like the animators are, they like if they wanted to animate something completely realistic, they could, but they chose, they prefer this, and it's much more fun. I mean, I'm not saying that old school Warner Brothers stuff, like, Tex Avery and Bob Clampett stuff that was really over the top. Some of that stuff was working just because it was all about timing and gags. And I mean, they're good. They're good for a good laugh. I don't think that they're necessarily good animation per se, but I mean, I'm getting technical at that point. You know what I mean? That's like, I think we need a round of beers for me to get into that conversation, because it's not as simple as that might seem. But
and I'm going to say in some animation style that are kind of very consciously not respect and go full on. I have to give a shout out to some of Sony's production. There are some like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball. I don't remember the name of the character, but in the second movie, just the way he's working is just making no sense. But it's but it's perfect. It's embraced in a way that is working. But those are the exception.
Yeah, and you know what I find too is the only way that ever works in my mind is if you set a bunch of rules that you're willing to break, you stay consistent with them. If you're consistent with those breaking of the rules, as opposed to just being literally all over the map, being all over the map doesn't make any sense. But people can get kind of accustomed to a set of rules that you're clearly demonstrating and following. Then it's like, oh, okay, I get it. That's how that character moves. Okay, I buy it. But if it's all over the place and it doesn't sort of adhere to anything, that's when things just start to fall apart, and people are gonna be like, what am I looking at? Anyways, we should move on to the next one, because we could literally talk all night about this. It's a big one. Thanks for the question. Yeah.
We have one from the chat, I think from Aruanim.
Yeah, where was that?
It's the third from the top. There's no Q before it.
Oh, Aruanim, come on. You know better than that. Is it is the one, was it on a specific company? Is that what the one?
When trying to join a team, this is what it's
okay. Third from the bottom. Yeah. Okay, got it. All right. Elranum asks, when trying to join a team, who or what would you recommend first reaching out to the HR of the company? ? I guess that depends.
I'm thinking of an example of a moment that I did reach out to HR to go on a team on I don't remember. My gut instinct tells me that no, this is definitely not the one that you want to reach. I'm assuming that there's different scenario. I mean, let's say we have a scenario that you are in a team. For any reason, it's a toxic environment. You cannot stand working for your supervisor. Your supervisor happens to be the best friend of the producer. Basically, there's no one that you feel comfortable to bring this up. Yeah, it might be a situation that HR, if you want to change project, might be a good idea. But I would say most of the time it happened within the ideally, you speak with your sir, you speak with the management team, and it's within a project. If you want to move within that production, it's usually with them that you would discuss this. Even if you want to change project, because I mean, they're going to know anyway, right? So you don't want them to learn from HR or another producer from another project, unless there's really is a situation like the one that I described before that is going on. But for me, going to HR to change team is probably a last resort.
You read this question differently than I did, which is interesting because I think it's very useful to think of it that way. You were assuming that you were working for a company, you want to switch teams as opposed to join. I read this as like just who should you reach out to get a job at a company in the first place? But I mean, you could read it either way. I'll answer it like that. So I think that when you're interested in working at a company, usually the recruiting department, which is an extension of HR, are usually the first line of defense there. They're the ones usually kind of receiving your emails and your submissions when you like say go to like recruit.idos.montreal.com or whatever. Like it's going to be usually them, and they will kind of perform some triage on it, and then the ones that they think are interesting for the leads that are looking for to fill some seats, they will send those over to be reviewed. I would say that that's always a good place to start, but I think that even better is if you know somebody that works there. Is always, if you can ever get an in any shape or form, it's always going to be a better way of doing it, because if you have someone kind of internally rooting for you, you might just fast track that, so I say networking is key, because you never know where some of your friends and colleagues will end up working one day, and they just might end up being your in at a company that you've always dreamt about working at. So, keep it classy out there, because you never know who's going to be in a position to recommend or do the opposite of recommending you to a company.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. If you're trying to work for a studio or join a studio, it's definitely HR or the recruiting department within HR. But if you know someone, that's even better.
Yeah.
For sure.
And don't feel bad about it. I think like you can always just ask them about it. Like, hey, look, I saw you guys. I saw that your company just put an ad out for looking for people. I'd be interested, just start a conversation casually and see what they say. Like, oh, wow, really? Okay. Yeah, cool. I think it's this team. I'm not allowed to tell you what they're working on, but yeah, like send me they might even tell you, send the stuff to them directly. And then maybe that'd be really cool. Cause now you're jumping the queue in a way. And now you have somebody there who might just put it on. I mean, I've hired people like that many times. Internal recommendations are what makes the world go round at these studios. I think that honestly, we always try to do that, because it's a bit more, it's a little bit less stressful bringing on somebody who at least has a rapport with a bunch of people that you trust on the team. Mm-hmm. Chances are that person going to work out better than somebody you've never met, that you have no information on, and you're going off of only a portfolio and an interview. So it's worth a lot. It's worth a lot. I'm going to put this one up because it's an interesting one, and it's one of my favorites. So let's say, hypothetically, I was deep into a project with a bad setup. Is it better to restart and work cleaner, or do I keep fighting the technical gods into submission? Well, my friend, if you ever come across the actual answer to this question, then you might save the industries of animation millions and millions of dollars. Because, my friend, this question is one of those holy grail questions that so many especially video game projects. Mm-hmm. The number of times I've been on a video game project and the scary question comes up at some point. And it's inevitable, especially during certain cycles of video game production. If a new console is coming out, for instance, suddenly that might change like everything. And there's always going to be suddenly some pressure to be like, we should definitely be making this game for the new Xbox, and mm-hmm. that might come with certain expectations and or requirements that might require, suddenly a restart. So it's not really necessarily about restarting because it needs to be cleaner, but it could mean redoing a lot of stuff. Another thing that happens a lot is, like, for instance, maybe someone decides that suddenly we should change engines. And it's like, oh my God, here we go. And that's another good example of suddenly, wow, like, but to speak directly to your question, which is not necessarily about something profound, like changing the technology, but like it is just set up badly. This is a huge problem in the game industry, because what ends up happening is the game productions will typically in pre-production do what are called prototypes to features. And prototypes, depending on who builds them, could be built with duct tape and glue and spit, like anything they got people lying around. And if the project doesn't actually end up taking the time to properly redo that feature, because it's like, well, we're already late. We got no time to stop for gas. We're already late. That unfortunately, that attitude tends to put productions into these tricky scenarios. And then suddenly technical directors are looking at that question you just wrote there and staring it really long into the face, because it's like, that ends up being like, well, what's the risk? So they start running the numbers. They literally try to calculate whether it's better off time-wise to actually reconfigure refactor the whole thing, or whether they should just scrap it and start from scratch. It really depends on how much more they have to build on top of that feature. It's a very complicated question that a lot of people are going to have a sort of their argument and their voice heard on, and it's going to go one way or the other. So it might not always be your choice, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say, sorry, I got distracted by Sergey's question that I'll be very tempted to answer afterward.
Yes. The floating heads, actually, he's conducting an experiment.
That's the difficult exercise. What you mentioned is how long is it going to take to fix this bad setup, and how much time are you going to gain by it? So, and that's even something that you can apply to a rig that you're animating, for instance. I don't have this tool, so it literally takes me 8 clicks to do this one thing. We should really, I don't want to keep doing this over and over in the production, so we should fix that. So usually it's like, okay, well, how long do you do this? Well, I do this twice a week. Okay, how long does it take you? No, 8 seconds. It's annoying. All right, 16 seconds a week. How long is it going to take to fix? 5 hours? It's probably not worth it. This is often how those things ends up being decided. Is it worth it or not? But of course, this is all based on the very subjective analysis of people. That on top of that, when we're talking about fixing an engine, a game engine, or replacing part of a game engine by a new team that was not involved with the development, and they have their own idea of what.
Come on, that would never happen. There.
Of course not. But that's that's why it's a tricky question.
Yeah, it is. If you're the one making the decision, you have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, what do I need this thing to do? Can I get it done like this? And how much time would it take to get there? Because at the end of the day, it's different when you're working on your own personal project, because you are free to, make that call and just because you can. But when you're on the job, it could be blocking lots of other people in other departments to take a little longer to do the refactor. Trust me, animation departments always get screwed by this, because it's like, we need to make a change to the rig because all these other people need it, or because to make our lives easier, we need to do it. But then that means we have to put a new character in there, and then we have to re-export everything. And then in the meantime, the game's completely broken and the designers are losing their minds because they can't play the game. The play test that was booked for next week is now canceled, and you're the a-hole for actually, doing it's like, it can be a kind of a disaster. And so it affects more than just you. So there's more weighing in on that decision than just whether it's the right thing to do or not, because the right thing is not necessarily so black and white. And when you have that kind of layers of stuff on top, but welcome to the industry. Or should I say circus? So I should just play circus music every once in a while, just to give everyone a little taste.
Yeah. You want to bring Sergey's question? That's
sure. Yeah. Okay.
I'll just in 30 seconds.
Inquiring minds want to know. Okay. David.
Honestly, it's because it's not the first one to ask me. No, those are not aquarium. This is a shelf with little LED lights that I can set up any color. And what is in here? I have. It's basically like a little museum of some of the production that I worked on. So that's my little Poe from Kung Fu Panda 2.
Never heard of him.
That I worked on. That was pretty cool. What I have here, I have my
heavy maquette. What's it made out of, that thing? Is it like ceramic or resin or something?
I don't know. It seems like hard plastic, but that's pretty heavy. Good. So I'm not sure.
It looks good.
Oh, I just noticed it's a 183 out of 650 for all the production crew. I have my little Deus Ex character, another franchise that I worked on. What did I have? Oh God, I'm going to try to not break this one. My little Tomb Raider character there, which is basically the last production I did at ADAS Montreal, like this one. So yeah, my little Adam Jensen bobblehead.
Yeah, I got one of those kicking around here somewhere.
So that's a little bit of everything, like art books and all that related with animation.
Nice.
That's what it is.
David Hubert tour.
Yeah.
I would have left it a mystery, so people could have just imagined the things back there. And we would have never known, but now it's less exciting to me, David. I can't
I know that's
totally let
that's
the
how we
cat out of the
roll.
bag.
We have no secrets.
Oh, Sergey's got another question. He thinks
Oh
just
God.
because he asked cool questions about your background, he's gonna I'm gonna bring up his other question. You know what? I'll bite. I'll bite. Question: Agora Community seems like a really amazing idea and resource. Could that be something that takes away from already traditional quote unquote animation schools, or are you planning to possibly open an Agora animation school at
Cool.
some point?
At some point. That's a question that one of the first things that we ask ourselves when we started to talk about Agora.Community was, what do we want to bring that doesn't already exist? And one of the first things that we agreed on is there's already a lot of online animation school out there. Yes, we could be one more, but what else are we going to bring? So I think it was more the idea of not necessarily starting a school, but finding a platform that would provide affordable one-on-one connection with top people from the industry, and then we could also create some content and put it for free on the platform. Oh, look at that, we have all those friends and collaborators that we know that are also interested for them to allow us to share their material on the library. So it's slowly one thing being built after the other. Is it going to replace traditional animation school? We don't really see it that way. We think more as an ecosystem, and you have the brick and mortar tradition school, you have the online school, you have the private mentoring that people are starting to do. There are some that are just learning out of video that are on YouTube, and we're going to be one new option out there that is going to take its place. So yeah, this is how. At the same time, we are, the way that we approach it is go with the flow. We start with a vision, and then we adjust course over time. So what is going to be the final realization of it? It's not completely clear, but I think it's definitely going to be providing a new, different option out there for those that want to learn, starting with animation, but eventually a lot of other expertise. That is going to be an hybrid between the online animation school and just going on YouTube and basically trying to figure it out by yourself. A sweet spot that's going to be way more affordable than online school, but way more organized and supported with a community than just by yourself trying to look at YouTube videos. So hopefully that's a new sweet spot that we'll be covering for that. Brent, what do you think?
We were really trying to fill a gap that we perceived, which was what happens between schools and what happens maybe after school. We had no ambitions to try to interrupt that. We were kind of, we didn't, like David said, like why go in competition with all these other schools? Like, it doesn't make any sense. We didn't really want to do that. What we saw was an opportunity to have a place where people could be part of a community, something bigger than themselves, be able to network and be able to like connect without having to go to a school all the time to do that, I think is the key. I mean, we don't have structured lessons and, like a weekly sort of like, class to go to. That's not what we started to do. Like, I'm not saying that we won't do kind of workshops and stuff, and we've been talking a lot about doing things like this. But the main theme was to try to provide it as a resource for people to learn at their own pace. And then whenever they felt like they needed some feedback, or even if they just wanted some career advice, they'd have a means to do that. If that's all they really needed, there's a lot of people out there that just they're working, already, and they want to continue working on their skills. It's not a viable option for them to suddenly have to go back to school while they're working. It doesn't make any sense. But so where do they go? Where do these people go? Where they just want to like learn or continue to sharpen their skills? A lot of those people are competing in challenges like 11 Second Club and challenge. These are really good places to go to keep themselves sharp, but that's just really giving them a challenge. It's not really necessarily putting them in a position where they can soak up a bunch of cool tips and other ideas and maybe network with a bunch of people that are like-minded, that work at other companies that might lead to another job at another place. Like, this is the thing, right? And like David said, we're like literally figuring it out as we go. Like, we're taking a lot of feedback from the community. We get questions like this that make us reflect again on like, where is it going? It's interesting timing because David and I just had a little powwow just really recently to talk about, okay, so like we have these check-ins every once in a while, these reality checks, and we take a look at the pulse of what's going on right now and what do we really need to do and where does it need to go and where does the energy need to be placed in order to build some energy and some momentum behind some of the things. So yeah, you're catching us on one of those. So I'd like to think that we're going to start to see a bunch of other kind of things kind of invigorate and start to materialize. And that usually comes from these little moments where we kind of reflect and just, and we didn't have a precise idea in our head. And that's just how I think David and I both roll. Like we start in a direction that we think our instincts are telling us to go in. And then we just learn as we do it and learn what works and what doesn't work. And we do more of the stuff that does and hopefully less of the stuff that doesn't. So yeah, it's a really good question, and it strikes the heart of what it is. And I think the interesting thing is what it is it's already what it needed to be in many ways, and that is a community. I mean, a lot of you I see in here almost every single time we do a stream, and I'm sorry for those who did show up late. I don't know what's up with that Discord bot. It tends to be really late sometimes. Like sometimes I've seen it and notify people after the stream is done, which is really dumb. I really highly recommend you actually add Agora Community's Twitch channel to your Twitch account. You should set up a Twitch account and then use because then it'll just pop up right on your phone, the Twitch notification when we go live. It might be a more reliable way to know when we go on air. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it can go a lot of different directions, and we are not necessarily against anything as long as it works for all of you. That's what it's there for in the first place, right?
Yeah, I think the idea will always remain to democratize knowledge, basically, and so let's create all this material and provide it to everyone. And if you need time from someone that's going to help you specifically on your project, on whatever you're doing, on your animation, then we will have a system to allow this. That will remain at the heart of everything that we're doing. That's for sure. One
thing you can definitely look out for, which is interesting because it is pretty close to the heart of this question. The learning paths, they were put in there kind of haphazardly. They were missing a couple of the key features, the playlists. They're still not done. They will be done soon. When the playlists are there, I'd like to think that we're going to start really doubling down on that and really putting more in there. I'm already in the process of starting to think about like what are the next ones that should go in there. I really want to make sure David and I both really want to put some very early entry kind of stuff, like where like you're just starting how to animate. What are some like how do I get going? You know what I mean? Like literally really early stuff for those who are really interested in just discovering what animation is. And then from there, you could maybe take a course because you really like it now. You could go to a school. You could continue trying to learn a little bit on your own here, like whatever tickles your fancy and whatever makes sense for you financially and like whatever your sort of life schedule is like. But we want to do a lot of those. And they'll be a little bit more accessible once we have a bit more of the tools online to set them up and organize them. Including, we want to have like calls to action, like Marco has these in his, which is like, recommended exercises. The idea is, okay, so you've learned this, you've listened to it, try this, try doing this. And the cool thing is that obviously is great because if you wanted to do it and you wanted to get some feedback, Marco, by the way, is going to be rolling on as a reviewer very, very soon. So you could tap him directly and be like, how did I do? I watched your learning path. I tried the thing you told me to try. Am I doing it right? And he could be like, yes, you are, or maybe not so much, or maybe pretty close. And like, that's kind of exactly how you learn, right? You learn something, you try it, and then someone's got to tell you whether you're doing it right or not. So we're kind of trying to close the loop.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. On one side, we're giving a lot of our time in trying to create this amazing platform, and all the content is available for everyone. At the same time, we're doing this literally on our free time. So
does it show?
So it means that it's getting there, but you
Yeah.
know, it's not going to happen overnight. Every month or every other month, slowly we're going to have new features, and eventually we'll look back 3 years and like, oh my god, we have all of this, and we're still continue to develop. So it's going to be a slow but consistent grinding motion forward towards where we believe that it can.
Although the topic of conversation with David and I, full transparency, was how can we maybe put a bigger fire under it so we can actually try to drive a little bit faster, because you know we see that the demand is there. People really want to see more of the sort of functionalities that we wanted to put in there too, but it does require, like, it's not a small job. Like it's a pretty big undertaking, as you can already see. Like, I mean, with all the kind of content, all the live streams are always happening. It's a lot of moving parts, and it requires someone to be constantly stoking that fire and pushing. So we're kind of going to be putting a bit more pressure to be able to do some more of that stuff. So let us know how we're doing. Don't be shy. Send us some feedback if you feel like there's new stuff going in there that you think is going in the right direction or the wrong direction. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a last question that is not from Sergey this time.
Yeah, no problem. Sergey, like Mr. Domination of the airwaves. I'm gonna go with someone from the backlog only because I'd like to try to tick off more of those orange cells, if that's okay. Unless you have a favorite in chat that you'd like me to ask.
I saw a question 5 minutes ago, but now it's done the chat. So
I'll do another one here.
Go for it.
Nothing against you people, lovely, amazing people in chat. I'm trying to take a more balanced approach to this, so that I don't. Oops, what the hell just happened? Oh, there we go. So that we at least make some sort of progress on the backlog front. Okay, so we have a question from Alopez Betancourt. How did I do? It's a career-based question, and this wonderful person had asked, how can I become a cinematic animator? What do I need to learn and show on my reel? Very specific question.
Yeah, well, I would say cinematic animation is not very far from feature animation, but in a sense that, you know, you control the camera, there's basically all the rules of performance and cinematography, and they apply. It's just that they are within the storyline of a game instead of a movie. So it's more, most of the cinematics is the big production. There's a lot of realistic humanoid animation in there. I mean, it's not just that, but a big portion of it is going to be shot with either motion capture or performance capture with human actor. So I would say definitely showing facial animation. Sometimes is mocap and sometimes it's not. So I would say good, solid, realistic facial animation is definitely something that they will be looking at. If you have realistic keyframe animation, that's great to showcase as well. I would probably encourage that you show your reference if you used a reference for it. So, or you just make obvious somewhere, especially if it's very well executed, that this is not mocap, that this is keyframe animation based on analysis that you've done on of reference. So yeah, I would say just good realistic humanoid animation in general is probably, for most studio looking for cinematic animators, those would be the main thing that they would be looking for.
And I'd say one big difference that I would find in cinematics on average compared to like long format feature film stuff like DreamWorks and Pixar and Disney and all those amazing studios do, would be that you're probably more likely to encounter more action sequences in a video game cinematic, just because of the nature of the, most games are, tend to be action packed. Not all, of course, but many. And so make sure you got your bases covered. Make sure you're showing some good, dramatic scenes or some good acting going on in there. And make sure that you're doing some that have a lot more, like a lot of movement, so that people feel like you're versatile and not just only like a one-trick pony. Something really fun happened. Well, fun. It was a topic that I ended up lamenting on during the Sunday review last weekend, and it was something. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine when it comes to acting sequences that people are doing to put on the reels. This is a phenomena that I see often happening with places like, especially 11 Second Club, because 11 Second Club, their shtick has been from the beginning. They have an audio clip and people then animate to that audio clip. Unfortunately, too many animators can't resist the urge to have, they have a cool idea that feels like a good fit for the audio clip when you read it. But then when you hear it coming out of the character, it doesn't have a good fit. And so I was talking this weekend about the job is to make it like it, when you're working on a professional performance and there's someone who's got professional audio recording, the performance is already there. It's not to say that you don't have some leeway and latitude to be able to like, imagine that performance in a couple of slightly different directions, but there's a truth to it that is unavoidable. And if you do not adhere to that truth, it will not feel right at all. And some people do it for a good laugh. And I've even seen 11 Second Club entries win with what I would consider a very, very terrible, like anchoring to the dialogue. Like it's a really bad fit. Because the community voted for it because they thought it was really funny, but it wouldn't pass the test on a feature film ever, because that's the job, or even cinematics. So make sure that if you are doing acting stuff, that you are trying to show truth to the performance. If you have a good audio clip that you're working off of, like try to understand the truth and the motivations and the agendas of the characters that you're hearing, and try to reverse engineer that so that you're doing something that feels like it's going to fit, because otherwise it might be good for a laugh, but maybe not good for a job.
Yeah.
That's it. I guess that's our question. Do you have something else you want to say?
No, I just wanted to mention, but to reiterate that since there's so much motion capture that goes, if you have that experience, and I think that Brent, that's something that you've mentioned, how to properly show motion capture in a clip, like ideally maybe the before and after that you did something, because
just
it could
don't
be
put
unclear.
it on there. Like you'll get at least a half a point for at least telling me that it's mocap. You'd be surprised how many people don't even do that. And then if you do, then for sure show some sort of delta. I'm interested in the difference between what you started with and what you ended up with, because how do I know just by saying motion capture, okay, cool, that doesn't get you that's not a get out of jail free card. That's okay, you got me interested. I'm interested to see what you're going to show me, but I'm going to be honestly asking myself, what did you do? Because it could be hardly anything, and you just like literally hit the render button. So show us.
Nowadays, especially now, there you can have glove and all that. There's some mocap properly cleaned that you literally have nothing to do.
Yeah, especially optical mocap. It's very, very, very good right out of the can. Especially if the technicians know what they're doing, retargeting onto the characters. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that we were going to answer another question, but I'm going to do it really quickly because Sergey, although having already asked a bunch of really good questions, he did ask one really, really good, important question that I think we should address because it is about Agora.Community and it's about the review process, something that we should probably talk a bit more about, because I feel like people don't necessarily understand the review process as well as I would hope they do. The question was, is there a limited...
Sorry, Brent, do you want to bring it? No.
Yeah,
do
sorry.
you want to bring the question?
I forgot. Yeah, good point. So is there a limited amount of reviews? Like if someone is doing a shot, can he or she ask for more than one feedback? Yes, absolutely. 100% yes. And this happens actually quite a bit now. I've had a few repeat customers. I know some of the other reviewers have as well. And I love it when that happens, because if you can establish a rapport with one of your reviewers and you like the way they give you the feedback and you feel like you're able to act on that feedback, go ahead and do it again. By all means. You might not have bottomless pits in your pockets for money. Of course, it costs money to do the review, but you don't have to do it every 2 seconds. But maybe showing them a block or a rough of it, getting some good feedback from that point of view, and then okay, cool. Let me incorporate that in, try to polish it up, and then see how because that's gonna help close the deal, I think, in many cases, depending on what kind of stuff you're trying to show. So yeah, I highly encourage you to send it again, or even send it to another person on purpose for a second opinion. Even it's whatever you want. There's you 100%. You can come as many times as you want. We'll look at it as many times as you want to send it to us.
Yeah, and you can send the same animation to two different reviewers.
Yeah.
As you said, if you send
Even
it,
at the same time.
let's say, to Brent and to Samantha Youssef, you
Yeah.
will most probably have feedback that are
Yeah.
focusing on different part of animation. So that could be another
And
great
if you
thing
want,
to try.
if you want to see some serious fireworks on the review, tell us that you sent it to, like, you know, tell me that you're sending it to Sam. Tell Sam that you're sending it to me. That way we're going to be competing against one another. I want to do better than Sam. I can't let her steal the show. There's no way. I'm not going to stand for it. So maybe you'll squeeze more energy out of us this way, and you sneaky little son of a guns.
I feel that we have a new segment for our next 24-hour challenge. That's going to battle of the reviewers.
That's it. That's a good
Each
idea.
reviewer has 1 minute, and they're voted by the community. And if you're voted out, well, it's a tournament. You're out.
That's it. You're the weakest link. I'm not going to compete. The best way to win that game is to not play at all. Let me tell you that right now. Okay, so David, thank you for showing up to Q&A. As always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
I'll see you later. It's getting close to your bedtime, so you should probably go and.
I'll go back in my box. I'm
go
going to put those.
That's it.
Back now.
Perfect. All right. Talk to you later, bud. See ya. Okay, so thanks for showing up, chat. Sorry for the extra late Discord notification. I'll see if I can get that fixed. I bet you there's a better one we can use. We're using Me6 right now, and it's the one they're responsible for that. It's just, I've asked them. I went to their Discord channel. I was like, "What's up with the friggin' ridiculously late notifications? I don't know what that's all about." And they're like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "Okay, I can't be the only one." So I don't know. I'll see if I can get to the bottom of it, or switch it out for a different bot that does the notifications. Or maybe even do something completely different. I mean, I know that it's all based on webhooks essentially. I just don't know what you need to hook into. It's whatever, like, it's like these streams, when they go live on something like Twitch, they send out some sort of broadcast that you can theoretically listen for, and then just trigger an announcement. So maybe a little bit of homework will yield a better, more reliable system. But like I said, and I think some people already commented on this advice that you can use Twitch as a better notification. It just pops it right up on your phone. But apparently that's even a little bit late. So your best bet is to subscribe to the Google Calendar. That way you'll get, like, your own Google Calendar is going to tell you, "Oh, hey, in a half an hour, Brent and David's going to go live on a Q&A," and then you just show up. That's probably the most reliable way that you could possibly have if you don't want to catch or don't want to miss a particular stream. Speaking of particular streams, we do have my old friend Troy Quain coming in this on Thursday. The exact hour I don't have handy. I know it's in the afternoon. Let me just take a look. Troy Quain is with us Thursday the 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. And he just finished shipping. Well, not just, it was a while ago now, but he was the co-director for Spies in Disguise. So that'll be an interesting conversation. I've seen him a couple times. So full disclosure, he and I both went to, I'm pretty sure he went to Sheridan College. Yeah, of course he did. He went to Sheridan College, but he was quite a ways ahead of me. So he was already a pretty well-established animator in the Toronto area when I was just like, Mr. like, much younger version of me, a lot more hair. So he was actually one of the lucky ones that got a job at Disney Toronto when it opened up, which was pretty cool, because he was definitely one of the better animators in the area. And his wife is actually also at the time, I don't know if she's still doing it like today, but she was a cleanup artist, one of the best ones. She was super highly regarded in Toronto. Like, if you had Victoria on your team, it's like the drawings were going to be immaculate. Yeah, they were like a power couple in the animation industry in Toronto. But he has since moved on and worked at quite a few different places. His most recent place being he was over at Blue Sky when putting out Spies in Disguise. So he's got lots of stories, I'm sure, to tell on his journeys. So please tune in for us on that Thursday talk. It'll be a nice little reunion for me, and a nice way to get to meet a really, really like humble, very down to earth, awesome animator turned director, and for you. Because I think he's somebody you should know about, and I think he's got a lot of important things to say. So I'll see you there, hopefully. In the meantime, please do enjoy the rest of your week. Stay animated, and just take care of yourself. Stay healthy and all that jazz. See you on Thursday. Cheers.